I'm meteorologist Todd Kirkman. Well, April is certainly starting out on a wet note. Very high Lake Ontario water levels will cause significant erosion and continue to reshape the shoreline.
The Moses Saunders Dam was built on the St. Lawrence Seaway in the 1950s to help regulate the water levels on Lake Ontario.
Some people want it high, some people want it low, and some people want a lot of variability.
Because the United States and Canada share Lake Ontario, the two governments created the International Joint Commission, or IJC, to oversee its waters.
Our function is to help the two countries prevent and resolve disputes over the uses of the shared waters. So these are things that involve water levels and flows.
The IJC became a household name for property owners, recreational boaters, commercial shippers, hydroelectric producers, and environmentalists in the spring of 2017 when the waters of Lake Ontario started to rise. It was a perfect storm. It was Mother Nature, and it was political.
There's no doubt but that the IJC blew it.
If that water were allowed to be released like they had the previous years, we wouldn't be nearly in the condition we're in today.
There are many of us here tonight that believe that those who so recklessly brought this devastation down upon us should face criminal charges.
In the late 1990s, the IJC began to take a closer look at the regulatory plan that controlled the lake's water levels. Many were unhappy with it, including environmentalists who say those controlled levels were destroying the lake's ecosystem.
The lake that is the most stressed of all the Great Lakes is Lake Ontario, and I would say that's in part because its levels are artificially constrained by a dam in the St. Lawrence.
After countless meetings and millions spent on a study, in December of 2016, the IJC passed a new regulation plan called Plan 2014.
For the first time, the environment of the lake and river was considered a stakeholder. That's what we have to start with, a healthy lake, and then we can figure out what everyone needs beyond that.
If there were an earthquake on the West Coast, we'd all be concerned. If there were a hurricane on the East Coast, we'd all be concerned.
I don't see any positive.
We've lost spirit.
Oh, God.
So many homes along Lake Ontario's shoreline were devastated by the spring and summer floods.
It was terrible. I should try to look more spry, but I don't particularly want to trip up.
Bob Bloomer's family has owned this property on the lake in Sodus Bay for more than 100 years. We went along as his neighbors showed him what the spring waters had done to his property.
So Bob's 91 years old, and today we're going to take a ride out and check the severity of the damage to his property.
The cement dock here was never underwater.
A year ago, I was able to walk on the lake side of Bob's house and walk all along the shore of Crescent Beach. Now you can't even get around the lake side of Bob's house. You have to get into his cottage from the bay side, and even that's treacherous because it's all been destroyed by the waves.
It looks absolutely horrible. I don't see any way that it's even worth thinking about trying to save the place.
Mary Beth Williams is Bob's neighbor on Sodus Bay. She worries about him and about the future of all of their homes.
To watch a place that is so much about him and his love and his heart just get washed away, it's devastating. So, you asked, what's it like to watch that and think I'm next? That's part of the stress and anxiety of every single day of the last 5 months.
Now the trick is to find the key.
Explain what happened this spring that caused all of this.
We had a lot of water, record rainfalls, record supplies, things that haven't been seen since records were taken.
Plan 2014 went into effect in January of 2017. And then, in the spring, came the rain.
I'm meteorologist Dan Russell. After a very wet April, May is starting off wet as well. We have already seen a month's worth of rain, and it's only May 6th.
More than twice the normal levels of water ended up in the lake, according to NOAA. The Ottawa River was the highest it'd been in 50 years. The record rain flooded those to the north of the lake, in Quebec, and flooded those south of the lake in New York State. The IJC blamed the weather.
The extreme high water levels on Lake Ontario this year were primarily driven by extreme weather conditions. The extreme weather.
Residents blamed Plan 2014.
The studies showed that there's virtually no possibility of protecting people from floods when the rains come in exceptionally large amounts.
Lena Pollock was chosen as the American chair of the IJC by President Barack Obama in 2010. The IJC says that Pollock and her appointed Canadian counterpart, Gordon Walker, traditionally work by consensus to find solutions that are in the best interests of both countries. And while there was consensus among IJC commissioners over Plan 2014, there was anything but for those along the lake's southern shores.
I would argue that Plan 2014 is not capable of protecting against extreme levels on the lake.
Retired engineer professor Frank Skier-Mamano serves on the International Lake Ontario-St. Lawrence River Board. The board is responsible for carrying out the IJC's directives. Frank has been on the board since 1995 and has been an opponent of Plan 2014 since its inception.
Some of the things that the IJC told us at the time, this was an act of Mother Nature. It had nothing to do with Plan 2014.
I would say that, yes, we would have seen flooding. It may have been to the same extent we've seen it this year, but the board, if they could have taken action in March, may have been able to get a few inches off. And if we weren't constrained by Plan 2014, we may have done something different during the summer too. The plan is designed for more variability in the lake, including very extreme levels that cause flooding. It predicts a level of 248.5. At that point, Soda's Point is underwater. And that was deemed acceptable by the IJC. And I just don't understand that.
Oh, God. Now, bear in mind, I built all this myself.
Lake Ontario did not wash away Bob Bloomer's family keepsakes inside, but this cottage is unusable. There's no land around his home, no plumbing, and no electric.
How do you deal with this?
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
I think the people who are responsible for this Plan 2014 need to show their element of compassion and say, we are really sorry. It may not be enough. Sorry may not be the words people want to hear, but let's work together to make this a little bit more manageable for the future, because things are sure screwed up right now.
We simply can't protect every piece of property. There's no physical way. When it rains that hard, that long, that intensely, that quickly, there's nothing that we can do to manage it.
While many in low-lying areas were flooding this spring and summer, residents living at higher elevations with little or no shoreline protection quickly realized that Mother Nature could be equally destructive. Their properties were crumbling away into the lake.
As of right now, we have a lot of damage.
We hit higher ground next.